Hi, everybody. My name is Officer Chris Leonard, and I am a police officer for the Mount Pleasant Police Department. And I know that my outfit looks a little bit different than the traditional police officer, but that's because I'm assigned to our youth services unit, which means I primarily work within schools, because my main goal as a police officer is to keep all of you children safe. I'm very excited to be reading a book to you today, so I really appreciate you listening and taking the time out of your day to hear from me. I am going to be reading Amelia and Eleanor Go for a Ride. Now, what's really cool about this book is it is based on a true story, which means all the events in this book actually happened in real life. So Amelia and Eleanor were birds of a feather. Eleanor was outspoken and determined. So was Amelia. Amelia was daring and liked to try things other women wouldn't even consider. Eleanor was the very same. So when Eleanor discovered that her friend Amelia was coming to town to give a speech, she naturally said, "Bring your husband, come to dinner at my house, you can even sleep over." It wasn't unusual for two friends to get together, but Eleanor was Eleanor Roosevelt, the First Lady of the United States who lived in the White House with President Franklin Roosevelt. Amelia was Amelia Earhart, the celebrated aviator who has been the first female pilot to fly solo over the Atlantic Ocean. And when two of the most famous and adventurous women in the world got together, something exciting was bound to happen. This is Washington, D.C., and that is the White House. I got to see the White House in real life last year, and it was really neat. In the guest room at the White House, Amelia and her husband, GP, dressed for dinner. Amelia pulled on long white evening gloves that were so different from the ones she sometimes wore when she was flying. Many people didn't understand why a woman would want to risk their life in a plane, but Amelia had said it more than once. It's for the fun of it. Besides, she loved the feeling of independence she had when she was in the cockpit. She carefully folded a gift for Eleanor, a silk scarf that matched her own. The powder blue with streaks of indigo reminded Amelia of the morning sky. That is Amelia putting on her long white evening gloves. Meanwhile, Eleanor dressed for dinner too. Her brother Hall would be escorting her this evening because the president had a meeting to attend. As you can imagine, the president's very busy. She pulled on long white evening gloves that were so different from the ones she sometimes wore when she was driving. She peeked out the window at the brand new car that had just been delivered that afternoon. She couldn't wait to drive it. Many people thought it was too bold and dangerous for a woman to drive a car, especially the First Lady of the United States. But Eleanor always gave the same answer. It's practical, that's all. Besides, she loved the feeling of independence when she was behind the wheel. It was a brisk and cloudless April evening. The guests had gathered in the Red Room, and the table looked elegant, as small dinner parties at the White House can be. Eleanor and Hall greeted Amelia and GP, as well as several reporters and a photographer. Amelia gave Eleanor the scarf. "I love it," exclaimed Eleanor. "It's just like yours." Dinner started with George Washington's crab chowder. "This is delicious," said Amelia. "But if soup at the White House has such a fancy name, what will dessert be called? Perhaps Abraham Lincoln's peach cobbler? Or maybe Thomas Jefferson's custard?" They laughed as everybody took turns guessing. By the time they got to the roast duck, the conversation had turned to flying. "Miss Roosevelt just received her student pilot license," said one of the reporters. Amelia wasn't surprised. She had been the one to encourage Eleanor. She knew her friend could do anything she set her mind to. "I'll teach you myself," offered Amelia. "I accept." "Tell us, Amelia, what's it like to fly at night in the dark?" And there they are discussing at the dinner table flying. Everyone at the table leaned closer to hear. Very few people in the whole world had ever flown at night, and Amelia was one of them. Amelia's eyes sparkled. The stars glittered all about and seemed close enough to touch. At higher elevations, the clouds below shine white with dark islands where the night sea shows through. "I I've seen planet Venus setting in the horizon, and I've circled cities of twinkling lights. See, there they all are. Looks like they're daydreaming about flying at night. You can see the stars and the dark sky behind them. In the capital city at night? Asked Eleanor. There's no describing it, said Amelia. You just have to experience it on a clear night when you can see forever. Why? We should go tonight. We could fly the loop to Baltimore and back in no time. The Secret Service protested. This hasn't been approved. Nonsense, said Eleanor. If Amelia Earhart can fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, I can certainly take a short flight to Baltimore and back. Before dessert could even be served, Amelia called Eastern Air Transport and arranged a flight. Within an hour, Amelia and Eleanor boarded the Circus Corridor twin-motor airplane. For a moment, both women looked up at the mysterious night sky. Then, without changing gloves, Amelia slipped into the cockpit and took the wheel. The plane rolled down the runway, faster and faster. Lights from the airstrip flashed in front of them, and they lifted into the dark. See, that is the two women in the cockpit flying the plane down the runway. How amusing it is to see a girl in a white evening dress and high heels flying a plane, Eleanor said. Amelia laughed as she made a wide sweep over Washington, D.C. and turned off all the lights in the plane. Out the window, the Potomac River glistened in the moonshine. The Capitol dome reflected a soft golden halo, and the enormous, light-drenched monuments looked tiny, like tiny miniatures. Soon, the peaceful countryside gave way to the shadowy woodlands. The Chesapeake Bay became a meandering outline in the horizon. And even though they knew it wasn't so, it seemed as if the plane crawled slowly through the star-struck space. Eleanor marveled, it's like sitting on top of the world. And there they are flying. And you can see how dark it is, all the pretty stars out in the dark sky. And then this is what it would look like from a view from them when they're looking down at Washington, D.C. It was time to land, and Amelia carefully took the plane down. A group of reporters had gathered, anxious to ask questions. Miss Roosevelt, did you feel safe knowing a girl was flying that ship? Just as safe, said Eleanor. Did you fly the plane, Miss Roosevelt? Asked one reporter. What part did you like the best? Said another. I enjoyed it so much, and no, I did not actually fly the plane. Not yet, but someday I intend to. I was thrilled by the city lights, the brilliance of the blinking pinpoints below. Amelia smiled. She knew just how Eleanor felt. And there they are talking to all the reporters. As the Secret Service agents drove them slowly back to the White House, Amelia and Eleanor agreed that there is nothing quite as exciting as flying. Well, they admitted, maybe the closest thing would be driving a fast car in a straightaway road with a stiff breeze blowing in your face. Arms linked, they walked up the steps to the White House. Eleanor whispered something to Amelia, and they both hesitated, letting the rest of the group walk ahead of them. Are you coming inside, Miss Roosevelt? Someone asked. But by then, they had wrapped their silk scarves around their necks and they were hurrying towards Eleanor's new car. Without changing her gloves, Eleanor quickly slipped into the driver's seat and took her turn at the wheel. With the wind in her hair and the brisk air stinging their cheeks, they flew down the road. And after they had taken a ride about the city streets of Washington, D.C., they finally headed back to the White House. And there they are driving in the dark, and that's a convertible car. They're still pretty common now, but they're way, way more common back in the old days. For dessert, Eleanor Roosevelt's pink clouds on angel food cake. I've never heard of that, pink clouds on angel food cake, but it does sound like a fancy White House dessert. And that is the end of the book, and that's just a picture of that fancy convertible car in front of the White House. Well, everybody, I greatly appreciate, again, you let me take the time to read to you, and I hope that you all have a wonderful and safe rest of your day. Thank you.